नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंदा। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। नमो ब्रह्मण्य देवाय गोब्राह्मणहिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी ऋषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you once again. So today let's begin with a brand new shloka, and that is shloka number 9. So it's another very beautiful shloka where Duryodhana is continuing to show his diplomacy. Let's see what he is saying here. अन्ये च बवः शूरा मदर्थे त्यक्तजीवितः नानाशस्त्रप्रहरणाः सर्वे युद्धविशारदः. So very interestingly, here Duryodhana is saying अन्ये च बवः शूरा. The translation goes like this. I will read the translation also. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all are experienced in the military science. So, Anyecha Baba Shura, not these great personality, not just these people like Bhishma, Drona. He's trying to now include the other kings also here, and he's saying that I have many great kings who are on my side, and Madarte Tyakta Jivitaha. So, all these great personalities here are ready to give up their lives. They want to give up their life for my sake, Madarte. And they are all Nana Shastra Praharanaha. So I told you, Praharanaha also means astras. Like I mentioned earlier in the previous session, the difference between what is astra and what is shastra. Okay, so now it's very interesting here. To this shloka, there is something called as Saraswata meaning. Saraswata meaning means sometimes Mother Saraswati speaks the truth even through the mouths of evil-minded people like Duryodhana. So here the Saraswata meaning, although Duryodhana is saying Madarte Tyakta Jivitaha, all these kings are ready to give up their life for my sake, the Saraswata meaning is all these kings who have taken the side of Duryodhana, they will die because of Duryodhana. So that is the difference. Duryodhana is saying they will die, they are ready to give up their life for my sake. But the Saraswata meaning is, all these people will die because of me. So that is what Mardarte Tyakta Jivitaha. They will all die because of me is the Saraswata meaning here. So now, although this is brief, we should know very clearly anybody who is on the field of Dharma Kshetra. We understood Kurukshetra is the Dharma Kshetra. So on this Dharma Kshetra, all these unwanted weeds, these adharmic rulers, kings, will be uprooted and they will be eliminated by Krishna. So that is another indication here. So none of these adharmic kings will survive. It is a clear indication all these people will die on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So let's go to the next verse, shloka number 10. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma virakshitam paryaptam tvidametesham balam bhima virakshitam. Let me read the translation. Our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. So, here in this particular shloka, Duryodhana is making a comparative analysis of the strength of both the parties. So, he is estimating the strength of his army and the army of the Pandavas. So, specifically on his side, he is saying that aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma virakshitam. So, aparyaptam. So, there is a Saraswata meaning here, but we will understand that what is Duryodhana doing. Duryodhana is taking the name of Bhishma, the very powerful general, on his side, and he is saying that our army being protected and ruled and under the guidance of Bhishma is very, very powerful. Aparyaptam, it is sufficient. Paryaptam means sufficient. Aparyaptam means it is more than enough. It is very powerful. But on the other side, he is taking the name of Bhima. The Pandavas' army is ruled and under the strength and guidance of Bhima is Paryaptam. It is limited. Why is taking specifically Bhima's name? He knows very well again that if at all I have to die, I will die under the hands of Bhima. And he has taken his name twice now. In the just last matter of 4-5 slokas, he is again taking Bhima's name because he is very fearful of Bhima. He knows I will die only in the hands of Bhima. So that was his fear. But right now we should know, in this particular shloka, also there is the Saraswata meaning. Saraswata meaning means Mother Saraswati is conveying a message through the words of Duryodhana. Anytime when there is a prefix, so prefix to a word, the prefix can actually become an intensifier or a negator. What do we mean by this? Aparyaptam. Just for example, let us take a word now, valuable. Valuable is a word, but when we add in as a prefix, invaluable. Invaluable is, it is so valuable that its value cannot be measured. That is invaluable. So when you add a prefix in, it becomes intensifier. You take another word, substantiate. And if you add prefix insubstantiate, it actually negates the value. It actually is of less importance here now. So that is insubstantiate. So prefix sometimes can intensify the word, sometimes it can negate the word. So here, actually, if you take the Saraswata meaning, aparyaptam. So what is Saraswata meaning is, aparyaptam means is taken as a negation here. Actually our army under the guidance of Bhishma is aparyaptam. It is of very, very low strength. It is of lesser strength compared to Paryaptam, Bhima Virakshitam. But that army is Paryapta. Just by Bhima, being guided by Bhima, Pandava's army is very, very powerful. And it is sufficient. But whereas our army is insufficient. That is Saraswatami. So, there are certain acharyas, based on the commentaries of different acharyas, the meanings, these meanings are explained to us. So that is why I am sharing this meanings with all of you. So now let us understand, and let's go to the next shloka, and that is shloka number 11. Aineshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastita bhishmam eva virakshantu bhavantas sarva eva hi. Okay, wonderful, very nice. So please repeat the translation also. I am skipping the word to word meaning today. Now all of you must give full support to Grandfather Bhishma, standing at your respective strategic points in the phalanx of the army. Okay. So here, Aineshu Sarveshu, very, very interesting again. So, Duryodhana is so expert, he doesn't want to leave out anybody else. Like he has taken the names of the great generals and the commanders. Now, also he has taken and mentioned about the other kings on his battle, on his side. At the same time, now he also wants to include the foot soldiers, because they shouldn't be left out. They are also equally important. And what he's saying, Aineshu sarveshu, all of you are also very, very important. And yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva virakshantu. Bhishma is very busy, he will be very busy fighting, and at that moment the enemies may actually take advantage of Bhishma's full engagement in the war. At that time, all of you should also, being in your own respective strategic points, should help Bhishma. You should see that he is very safe. So, he is very old now. How much he can fight? You know, he is old and you all should protect him. He is a grandfather. But you should know, Bhishma, although he is a grandfather, he is extremely powerful. And Duryodhana knows, if at all I have to win, if I can win this battle, it is possible only with the support of Bhishma and Bhima. So you see, Duryodhana knows the strength of Bhishma, but at the same time he wants to encourage all his other members. It's very interesting. Some of you must be thinking that this Duryodhana is a very expert speaker. You may really appreciate the calculative speech that is given to all of us. Each and every word that Duryodhana is speaking is so calculative. At the same time, you see his presence of mind. You see the way he is being diplomatic with everybody. And some of you may become actually even impressed by the way Duryodhana is speaking. It is really, really wonderful, isn't it? The way Duryodhana is speaking, somebody can become very impressive, and in fact, it is a quality of a leader. He is a very wonderful guy, and he has all the leadership qualities. So materially speaking, they are very, very powerful. But at the same time, we should know, just because a person is a very good speaker, the caliber of a person is not based on the expertise of his speaking. No, not at all. The caliber of the speaker or the caliber of a person is actually understood by the purity of his heart, the purity of his motives, the purity of his intentions. But whereas here we can understand the intentions and the motives of Duryodhana. He was full of greed. he was full of envy, he was full of greed, wanted to rule and dominate people. So he is filled with all these different things within his heart. So these things are not good. These things are not good. And we should not judge anybody's spiritual life or spirituality based on somebody's speech. Especially in Kali Yuga, it has become a fashion that anybody speaks very good, very fluently in English. He is considered to be a spiritualist. And this is called Shabda Chapalyam. Shabda Chapalyam means expertise in speech. You cannot judge a person and you should not conclude anything about a person just by the way he speaks. But in Kali Yuga, just because people use this flowery language, they are promoted as very topmost gurus in the world. That is not how we judge a guru. A spiritualist, a genuine guru, is judged by his purity of heart, not by the expertise in his speech. They are definitely very good in speaking, but that doesn't mean that's the only quality by which we should judge a spiritual master or a guru. So Duryodhana is a very expert speaker, and at the same time we should know that Duryodhana is Kali personified. This Kali Yuga is actually having the Kali personified. There is a personification, Kali Purusha. So Duryodhana is Kali Purusha himself personified in the form of Duryodhana. There is an Avesha of Kali in him. So he is very, very expert in speaking. And that is how it is very much evident in this previous 9, 10 and 8 to 11 shlokas. So his diplomacy is very much visible here. Anybody else who has Bhagavad Gita, so that we can go to the next verse and you can repeat? Anybody else? Tasya sanjanayan harsham. Tasya sanjanayan harsham. Kuru vriddha pitamaha. Simmanadam vinadyochahi. Shankam dadmau pratapavan. Let's do that once again. Tasya sanjanayan harsham. Kuru vriddha pitamaha. Simmanadam vinadyochahi. Shankam dadmau pratapavan. Okay, please repeat the translation. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, like the sound of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Okay, so wonderful. So now this is very interesting. Tasya sanjayanan harsham. So now, while all this diplomatic talk was going on and Duryodhana was trying to mention about so many different things here, Bhishma, being very matured, could understand that Duryodhana is completely in fear. He could understand that Duryodhana is now fearful of the kind of arrangement that the Pandavas have made. So it was very evident the way he was speaking. Bhishma understood that Duryodhana is fearful, and now in order to encourage Duryodhana, what is Bhishma doing? Tasya sanjayanan harsham Kuru vriddha pitamaha. Simhanadam vinadyochahi shankam dadmau pratapavan. So Bhishma took his conch shell and he blew loudly like a roar of a lion. So Bhishma is no less than a lion. He's an extremely powerful personality. So Bhishma is now to give joy, to encourage Duryodhana. He blew his conch shell and told him that, don't worry Duryodhana, I am not going to spare any leniency. I am going to be very powerful here and I am going to fight with full vigor. So it is very, very, very important. This is the message that Bhishma is trying to convey here to Duryodhana. And at the same time, when Duryodhana heard this blowing of conch shell from Bhishma, he became very inspired and excited to fight. At the same time, Arjuna was also listening to this conch shell. What do you think? Did Arjuna become excited and inspired to fight after listening to Bhishma's conch shell? No. Although Arjuna also heard this blowing of conch shell by Bhishma, Arjuna was inspired to fight only when he heard the Krishnanadam. Only when Krishna spoke the words, the Bhagavad Gita, that is when Arjuna actually became inspired. Not just by listening to the conch shell of Bhishma. So that is the difference between the materialist and a devotee also. The materialistic people, by a little flowery language and little bit of inspiration, they will get excited to do and take up certain actions. But intelligent people, compassionate people, they think before they act. And that is why they take guidance from superiors. And that is exactly what Arjuna did. He was not excited and inspired to fight by listening to the conch shell of Bhishma Pitamaha. So that is the difference between Duryodhana and Arjuna. But by the way, I want to tell something very important about Bhishma today. Many people in Kali Yuga, especially in the recent times, they portray Bhishma to be a very weak personality. They say that Bhishma is a weak person who could not defend himself, he could not really speak out or voice out his opinions. He was always taking orders from the king of Hastinapura. That is what they consider Bhishma to be. Many people today, they think that Bhishma was not a very potent person, a very important kind of a person. That is what is the general understanding, and many so-called gurus today, even in their books and literature, they write very derogatory things about Bhishma. There are many people who pass on to be great scholars, but they want to bring down, denigrate the position of Bhishma. Unfortunately, that is happening today. But we should understand the position of Bhishma. Who is this Bhishma? How powerful this Bhishma was? We should know very clearly, although Duryodhana was so diplomatic, he is recognizing the strength of Bhishma here. Very important. Although Duryodhana knows all the diplomatic skills, he knows the strength of Bhishma. So by the way, any guesses, anybody? Do you know what was the age of Bhishma at this particular point of time when this battle was happening? I am throwing this question to all of you. Do you have any idea what was the age of Bhishma when he was fighting this battle of Kurukshetra? You can mention in the comment section, or you can just... Achyutan says 75. No, it is not 75. Any guesses? Come on, I want more answers from all of you. Vinith is saying 300 plus. Okay. I see that increase in number. All of you. Any guess? Dev Chandan 200. Okay. That's not correct answer still. You can guess. What was the age of Bhishma at this point when he was standing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Samir ji, Parashar Prabhu, any guesses? Shiva Chaitanya, 450 plus. Okay, I see now. The numbers are increasing bit by bit. Samir ji, any guess? Parashar Prabhu. Samir ji says 100. So let me tell you, at this point,
around 45 Prabhu?
that's way too less.
Way too less.
Bhishma, at this point, he was close to 800 years, almost 800 years. He was reaching to close to 800 years. I will tell you how. See, we people in Kali Yuga, the lifespan of an average human being is 100 years. The average lifespan of people in Dwapar Yuga was 1000 years. The average lifespan of people in Treta Yuga was 10,000 years. Rama ruled, Rama Rajya we say, no? Rama ruled for 11,000 years, Ayodhya. And in Satya Yuga, the average lifespan of human being was 1 lakh years. So, in Satya Yuga was 1 lakh years, divided by 10. In Treta Yuga, 10,000 years, divide by 10. In Dwapar Yuga, 1,000 years, divide by 10. In Kali Yuga, it is 100 years. And gradually, it is reducing because of all the junk food that we are eating, Pepsi and Coca-Cola. So it is becoming 70, 60. And as Kali Yuga progresses, the lifespan will be 20, 25 years max. So that is how there will be the degradation of human lifespan also going forward in Kali Yuga. So let us understand, who is this Bhishma? What was Bhishma's position in previous life? This Bhishma, although we know him as the son of Shantanu, Bhishma was actually one of the Ashtavasus. There are 8 Vasus in the creation, just like there are Marus, there are Gandharvas, there are Devatas. Vasus are also a kind of Devatas. There are Ashtavasus. So one of the Vasus, a Devata called Divnamaka Vasu. So this Vasu, Divnamaka, Divnamaka Vasu, he had a wife called Varangi. So this Varangi and Divnamaka Vasu were very, very wonderful and happy couple. They are ruling, they are part of this universe. And Divnamaka Vasu had 7 other brothers. They are also Vasus. This Varangi, the wife, had another friend who's also, her name was Varangi. She was the queen, a wife of a king. Her name was also Varangi. Now it is said that when people have the same name, Ekanama Sadapriti, it is said. When people have same name, there is lot of bonding between them. So this Divnamaka Vasu's wife, Varangi, and the king's wife, Varangi, both Varangis were very, very close friends. So once these friends, both of them, Varangi, they conspired. They thought that why not we steal Nandini, the cow, Surabhi cow, which belonged to Vasishtha Muni. Vasishtha Muni had a very beautiful cow, a very wonderful Kamadhenu called Nandini. And why they wanted this cow? Because anybody who drinks the milk of Nandini will never become old. They can actually prevent old age. Now this is not the Nandini milk, that packet Nandini milk we get here in Bangalore. This is the Nandini milk that they had. So why they wanted? Because by drinking the milk of Nandini, they could become very young, they could remain young and fresh and never become old. And that would also prevent diseases. And this is the general tendency of women, you see. That's why women, they are so fond of this wrinkle-free creams and this cosmetic and that cosmetic. So, although we use cosmetics these days, but Dvinamaka Vasu's wives, Varangi, and they were different. They are devatas. So they will not use or apply cosmetics like us. They wanted to drink the milk of Nandini and always remain fresh and youthful. So Varangi went and told the husband, this Vasu, Dvinamaka Vasu, and told, see, this is our plan and please, you should get this cow for us. Now, although Dvinamaka Vasu knows it is adharma, we should not steal, especially the cow belonging to a Brahmana. And as a husband, it is the duty of the husband to correct the wife. But by the pleasing words of Varangi, he agreed to her and he gave the word that yes, I will steal the cow, but I cannot do it alone myself. I will involve my 7 brothers also. So Dvinamaka Vasu, along with his 7 other brothers, they conspired and they stole the cow Nandini from Vasishtha Muni's ashram. And that is when Vasishtha Muni got to know that my cow is being stolen by this Vasus, he became furious and he cursed them to be born as human beings. So all these Ashtavasus, they were cursed by Vasishtha Muni to be born as human beings. Now for Devatas, to be born as human beings is a degradation. It's a humiliation for them to be born as human beings. They don't want to be born as human beings. But now, out of all these 8 Vasus, the main stakeholder of this whole conspiracy was the Dvinamaka Vasu. So Vasishtha Muni said that you will be born as a human being, not just as a human being, but when you are born as a human being, you will not get married, you will remain a brahmachari. And not just that, your wife, Varangi, even she will be born as a human being and she will not get a husband. She will also not marry. And both of you in human form will fight against, you will be enemies of each other. And that is how Dvinamaka Vasu was born as Bhishma and Varangi was born as Amba. And that is why there was this feud between Amba and Bhishma. Both of them, they never got married when they were here. Amba also didn't get married. Even Bhishma didn't get married. He remained a brahmachari, Naishtika brahmachari. And both of them were deadly enemies. And in fact, Amba became the cause, the reason for Bhishma's death. She took birth as Shikandi later on. And that is how she became the cause for the death of these Bhishma. Now the question is, what happened to the other 7 Vasus who were also cursed? What happened was, the other 7 brothers of this Dvinamaka Vasu, they went and prayed to Brahma. Brahma, please, we don't want to be born as human beings. We don't want to spend our life there on earth. So please help us. So Brahma told us, all right, you be born momentarily as human beings, but you accept Ganga as your mother. Ganga will give you birth, but moment you take birth, you will be killed. So Ganga accepted, yes, I will give you birth, but on one condition, Shishu Hatya Dosha should not come on me. Then I will give you birth for all you 7 people. So they all agreed, and that is how Ganga, she married Shantanu on 3 conditions. She said, you cannot ask my identity, and you should not you should not question my actions, and you should not ask reasons behind my actions. And Shantanu agreed, and Ganga succeeded in giving birth to all these 7 Vasus, and immediately she used to take the 7 children, and the moment they were born, they were left into Ganga, the river Ganga, and she used to kill them. And every time Shantanu was so disturbed by this, and only on the 8th time, that is when Bhishma was born. Shantanu could not tolerate, and he went and stopped Ganga and he questioned, who are you and why are you doing like this? Why are you killing my children? And that is when Ganga explains the whole background of these Vasus and tells him that this is why I was killing these people, because they had approached me and it was on their request I'm killing them. But now, since you have this eighth son, Bhishma, I will take him and I will train him. So Ganga takes Bhishma, and his earlier name was Devavrata. When he was born, his name was Devavrata. Devavrata means, Deva means play, Vrata means to renounce. So Devavrata means one who gave up playing. One who gave up the association of women is also called Devavrata, another meaning. Devavrata was trained by Ganga. What Ganga did? His own mother, she took Devavrata to the ashram of Brihaspati. This Bhishma, whom we consider, who is fighting here right now on the battlefield, 50 years, first 50 years of his life, he studied Vedas, Vedic study from Brihaspati directly. Another 50 years, he heard Tattvajnana, philosophical knowledge from Parashurama. Another 25 years of Astra Vidya from Parashurama. So you see, 125 years he spent his life in studying the Vedas, philosophical knowledge, Tattvajnana, and another 25 years in Astra Jnana. 125 years only in studies. And then after completing his studies, he came and met his father Shantanu, and very interestingly, when he met his father, he built a dam of arrows and he stopped the flow of Ganga. Can you imagine anybody doing like that? Building a dam out of arrows? Have you heard anything like that? No. We know how much time and effort and energy it takes to build a dam. But here, he was so expert, he could build a dam of arrows. So that is the power of Bhishma. He is no ordinary person. By the way, I should tell you, his education did not stop here. He was so curious and he was so inclined to study. After studying for 125 years, he again went to Brihaspati, and another 50 years of Vedic studies he acquired from Brihaspati. Another 50 years from Parashurama he learnt Astra Vidya, and 300 years more of Vedic knowledge from Parashurama. So if you put all together, 525 years of Bhishma's life was only spent in education, only in studying the Vedas and Astra Vidya, Shastra Vidya. He was so powerful, extremely powerful. And that is why on the Sharapanjara, when he was lying on the bed of arrows, Krishna requested Bhishma to speak all the wonderful knowledge that he had heard. And that is why, while Bhishma was on the bed of arrows, he actually spoke the Vishnu Sahasranama. This Vishnu Sahasranama today is so popular, it is actually given to all of us by Bhishma. Bhishma was one who has given us this Vishnu Sahasranam. And on the bed of arrows, Bhishma gave this beautiful knowledge of how to rule as a king to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira inquired from his grandsire, his grandfather, please explain to me what are the qualities of a king. Please explain to me. And that is how Bhishma explained so many beautiful things about how a king should rule. And if today our politicians, even if they can apply 5% of what Bhishma has told, India will become free from so many miseries. The people of India will become free. Not just India, even the people of the world will become free from so many unwanted things. So, that is the beauty of Bhishma. Bhishma was no ordinary person. Why 800 years? Like I told you, generally the lifespan of people in Kali Yuga is 100 years. The 700 years of his brothers who actually did not wanted to live on this planet, all their 100 years was transferred to Bhishma. This is what Madhvacharya explains. And his own 100 years. So all put together it is 800 years. So at this point he was almost reaching 800 years. So that is how old Bhishma was at this point. And still, being a 800-year-old man, you see the strength of Bhishma. Out of 18 days of the battle, first 10 days he was the commander, and every day he was finishing the armies of Pandavas. First 10 days he fought like a lion on the battle. Can you imagine the strength of Bhishma? So anybody tells you anything against Bhishma, we just stand up and speak all these things. Only some ignorant people will talk some low things about Bhishma. Bhishma is not an ordinary person. Now that's another thing why he was quiet during Draupadi's Vastrahana, the gambling match. That is another discussion for another day. But we should know that Bhishma was not an ordinary person. A very great devotee of the Lord. In fact, but now when he's blowing the conch, he's indicating to Duryodhana, Duryodhana, you have absolutely no chance to win this battle. It's because Krishna is there on the other side. And as long as Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas, you have no chance of winning this battle. So that's a clear indication that Bhishma is giving to Duryodhana. So Bhishma is not an ordinary person. So this is the background of Bhishma. And he remained a brahmachari. He never got married. And not an ordinary thing, it is not so easy to remain a brahmachari, especially in cities. And Hastinapura was a city where so much of opulence is there and so much of temptations are there. And not just city, he was in a palace. And in palace there are so many dasa and dasis. There is so much temptation, and out of all that, to remain a brahmachari, it's not an ordinary thing. Being among so many opulence and men and women, beautiful women, to remain a brahmachari, not an ordinary thing. So he was not a weak person at all. This is a clear indication about his inner strength. The vow that he had taken, that I will remain a brahmachari all the time, and that's why he was given the boon from his father that you will have Ikshamrityu. You can die whenever you desire. And that is how Bhishma was now lying on the bed of arrows. So many arrows, all piercing through his body, left, right and center. He was still not dead. One arrow pierces us, we are gone. We will be dead. But here he is lying on the bed of arrows, still is alive. It's because the pranavayu within him was under his control. He could live that pranavayu at his will. We don't have that capacity. When death comes, we just have to accept. We have to bow down and just go, leave this world. But Bhishma was not like that. So please understand that Bhishma is a very great personality, and anybody, we read certain books, we read certain commentaries by some people who take everything from Mahabharata, they take everything from Bhagavad Gita, they completely misconstrue the meanings, they denigrate these great personalities, and it has become a fashion these days. So we have to reject these people and never accept these people. So it's very, very important. Okay, so before I go to the next section, if you have any questions, please keep thinking about some questions. It is very important. Alright. So we have finished the 12th shloka. Let us also complete the 13th shloka, which is very important. So Achyutanji, are you ready? Okay, great. So please repeat after me the 13th shloka. Tata shankasya bhairyasya Padavanaka Gomukaha Sahasaivaabhyayantaha Sahasaivaabhayannanta Sashabdastu mulo bhava. We'll do that once again. Tata shankascha bheryascha Padavanaka Gomukaha Sahasaivaabhyanyanta Sashabdastu mulo bhava. Please repeat the translation. After that, the conches, bugles, trumpets, drums and horns were all suddenly sounded. And the combined sound was tumultuous. Okay, wonderful. So here you see that after Bhishma blew his conch, all the other players on the battlefield, they started blowing different conches and bugles and trumpets and horns, and so many different musical instruments were all played together, and there was this tumultuous sound which was created in the battlefield. So this is very interesting, isn't it? You know, there is a battle and they are all playing musical instruments. We have never heard anything like this in World War I or World War II, or the war that happened between India or China, or India or Pakistan in Kargil war. You know, before the war, you play some musical instruments, and no. The war nowadays is very silent. We really don't know when they're going to bomb, at what time they're going to bomb, from where they will come hiding and they will shoot us. It was not like that. This was Dharmic war, and they used to fight wars also based on certain protocols. Each one of them had certain protocols. And so beautiful it is. I mean, before war, you're playing musical instruments, it is really very nice. And this was also an indication that the Pandavas will win, because these were all auspicious signs. Because anytime when the Aarti is happening in the temple, the musical instruments are played, and anything auspicious we do, musical instruments are involved. So this battle, in one sense, is a very auspicious event. Although it is going to be very ghastly because so many people are going to die, but at the same time, it is an indication of dharma. After this war, dharma will be established on this whole planet. That was an indication. So all these unwanted elements, weeds, will be uprooted in this battlefield of Kurukshetra. So I want to definitely go to the next shloka, that is 14th shloka, but I want to keep it for the next week, because the 14th shloka is a very interesting shloka, because now the entry of the hero is going to happen. The hero is going to enter the battlefield, and it's a very beautiful description, and I want to keep this for the next week, because it's a shloka where now Krishna will enter, although not directly, but the description of Krishna and Arjuna is going to happen in the 14th shloka. So we are right now in the subsection 2, subsection B, where the description of the war is going to happen, is already taking place. Yeah,
Just wondering, how could Bhishma, he's so well trained and such a great guy as you're saying.
Yeah.
Why did he land up in was planning?
Yeah, very interesting question here. Simultaneously, there is another question. I just want to read it before many people are misinterpreting the Bhagavad Gita. How do we stop it? Okay, good question, Vinodji. So let me first answer Samirji here. Now, Bhishma definitely had so much of Vedic knowledge and he had learned so many things from great gurus like Brihaspati and Parashurama himself, the Supreme Lord. Parashurama is one of the avatara. And it so happened that when there was this Satyavati who happens to be the fisherwoman, and once Shantanu saw her, he got attracted to her, and Shantanu wanted to marry Satyavati. But the father of Satyavati said, no, that may not be possible because, what will happen to the children of Satyavati, because they will be having no kingdom to rule, and if you are ready to give the kingdom to the sons of Satyavati, then I will give my daughter to you. So that is how Shantanu could not take this. He said, he was attracted to Satyavati, but giving the kingdom to the sons of Satyavati and not to his own son Bhishma, that will be injustice. He thought that is not appropriate, and especially when Bhishma is so learned. So Shantanu was in Dharma Sankat now. He is right now wanting to marry, but at the same time he cannot go against his own son Bhishma, who is such a wonderful personality, and he was very morose and he was deep within so disturbed, and this was seen and understood by Bhishma, and he inquired from the charioteer. He did not even directly ask Shantanu, please tell me your problem. He was so intelligent and so sensitive. Bhishma goes to the chariot driver of Shantanu and gets to know all the details of what had happened. And that is how he got to know that, oh, my father is actually in love with Satyavati and he wants to marry. So Bhishma goes to this Satyavati's father and requests that please, ensure that you give your daughter to him, and your daughter, I will not take any ruling, I will not rule, and by that way it will be, your sons, the sons of Satyavati will rule.
Okay.
And then at that point of time, the father of Satyavati told Bhishma, okay, you are saying that you will not rule, but what in the future you will get married and you will have children. At that time, your children will come and they will fight for the property and the kingdom. So that will be a great problem. And then Bhishma told, I will take a vow right now that I will remain as a Naishtika Brahmachari. And because he took this very powerful vow that he will remain a Brahmachari, the demigods, they showered flowers on him. There was thundering in the sky, and that is why he got this word Bhishma also. His actual name is Devavrata, but when he took this very powerful vow, he got this name as Bhishma, because Bhishma, he took that very powerful vow, his name became Bhishma. So now the question is, why did he allow and he fought against this Kauravas was because he had taken another vow, and that is, I will become the servant of the king of Hastinapura, I will not rule it myself. So he had given this vow to this fisherman that I will not become the king at any point of time, I will only serve the king of Hastinapura. So now, in that case, now Dhritarashtra was the king and Dhritarashtra was adharmic, and whatever Dhritarashtra was telling, Bhishma was obeying to that. Although it was adharma, but he was trying to stick on to his own vow that I will not break my vow of not following the orders of the king. So that is what Krishna corrects him later on. Krishna points out this mistake of Bhishma. You were so attached to your own likings, you were so attached to your own vows that you forgot dharma, although you were aware of dharma. And that is what exactly Draupadi also says. All the Vedic knowledge and everything that you great people have, Dronacharya, Bhishma, is of no use. That's why it's called Asat Sabha. So many times in life, we are so stuck to our own attachments, we are so stuck to our own actions and perceptions, we don't want to change. That is why the whole Bhagavad Gita is to change our perception. Arjuna was also attached to his ideas. No, I have my idea. And until then, Krishna did not instruct. Arjuna was telling, this is my idea, not going to fight. This is my idea, that's why I'm not going to fight. Krishna was quiet. Okay, you want to speak, you speak. Yeah. Alright, you keep on speaking. I will not speak anything. Only when Arjuna understood that it's not in my capacity, it's beyond me, now I have to surrender to Krishna. Only when he surrendered, then Krishna revealed the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. We will see that in the future. And Krishna says, that is why in the 18th chapter, Sarva dharmam parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma shuchah. Sarva dharmam parityajya, give up all unnecessary dharmas. I am a man, I am a woman, I am a husband, I am an Indian. All these different dharmas that we are following today, Krishna is saying, give them up. Don't be attached to your own ideas. Be open to the ideas that Krishna is going to give. But unfortunately, Bhishma was attached to his own vow, although he was knowing that what is right and what is wrong. And that attachment led to so much big battle. If Bhishma had opposed it that time, this big war wouldn't have happened. Krishna tells and corrects it. So that is why many times we need to be very careful about our own inner attachments, deep attachments. We need to break them one by one with knowledge. The sword of knowledge. With the sword of knowledge, we need to break all these attachments.
Okay.
I hope that clarifies.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So then the very interesting, the next question Vinodji is saying. So many people misinterpret Bhagavad Gita. How do we stop this? And Chaitanya is really amazing to know that about the origin of Vishnu Sahasranam. Yeah, exactly. So how do we stop the misinterpretation? One thing is we ourselves should know the right context and the right meaning to the Bhagavad Gita. That's why I'm taking so much time. I really don't want to hurry, because if we really don't understand these intricacies of Bhagavad Gita and we don't deeply understand, it is not going to serve the purpose. We may just on a surface level understand Bhagavad Gita, but that may not really help us. But if we understand the subject matter deeply and internalize these things, then we can preach, we can speak about this truth to other people and convince people. That is number one. And as much as possible, try to understand Bhagavad Gita in parampara. So we have to educate people. We have to be aware ourselves first, what is right and what is wrong. And then we need to try to preach as much as possible. And if you can also distribute this Bhagavad Gita as it is, this is going to be really very interesting, and it's a great seva from your side. You can just distribute even soft copies of these Bhagavad Gita as it is, because that way people will read an authentic version of Bhagavad Gita, and that will really help them to understand the right import of the Bhagavad Gita. So we cannot understand Bhagavad Gita from anyone and anybody. It should be understood in parampara. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. So he says that understand this Bhagavad Gita in parampara. It's very important. So let's see. Share the PDF that you shared, Prabhu. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Yes, definitely. I'm going to share the Bhagavad Gita as it is in the group, the PDF form of that, so that you can share with others also. That will be really nice, and people can become aware of this. Also, please try to spread this message of the sessions every Sunday, so that more people can come and they can join in. So that way they will be benefited from this sessions. Okay, so Vinod is asking that why. Let me see what is the question. Why did Bhishma decide to end his life after so many days? Yeah. The thing is, he wanted to leave his body earlier, but he was always hoping to establish dharma, to see that dharma is. He wanted to see that Yudhishthira be placed on the throne, because that was his ultimate desire. So Bhishma continued to stay even after the battle was over, and he left his body only when the Uttarayana on the Shankranti, Makara Shankranti we say. So until Makara Shankranti he was waiting, and he did not give up his body. And meanwhile, because it is very auspicious to leave our body in the Uttarayana, you must be aware about, you must have heard about Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. So when the sun takes its northward journey, that is Uttarayana, is very auspicious to leave the body, and Bhishma was waiting for that auspicious time. So Makara Shankranti, when Uttarayana began, that is when Bhishma left his body. So until then he was holding on to his breath. He was holding on to his breath. He didn't want it to. At the same time, he also wanted to see that Yudhishthira be placed on the throne, because it was his deep desire to ensure that Hastinapura is ruled by dharmic people. So that was his desire, and he was holding on to his breath for that. I hope that answers the question.